Serpent, Scion by Orphan Account. Read by Kaiinbed. Chapter 2. Harry Gaunt. Boys from the younger age group in the Wool Orphanage share a large dormitory on the first floor. They are moved there as soon as they grow out of the nursery, about the age of 2. Imelda Cole, after emptying a second bottle of Scottish whiskey, decides to pay a visit in the younger boys' dormitory tonight. She has to take the weeds out. There is no way in hell she is letting her clumsy granddaughter take care of the freaky boy. There is no way she will be able to make him more well-adjusted. There is no way Imelda is going to allow the tragedy from 60 years ago to repeat itself. There is no way she is going to let the snake-speaking boy terrorize his peers. She creeps into the dorm room, still holding her empty whiskey bottle. Harry's bed is the first one, just next to the door. He had apparently moved it as far away from the other kids' beds as possible. Imelda leans over the sleeping boy and grabs him by the collar with one hand, covering his mouth with the other. The 3-year-old, violently jolted awake, stares at the elderly woman with wide, terrified eyes. He let out some muffled noises, gagged and unable to scream. "You go with me, little freak," old Mrs. Cole mutters, pulling Harry out of his bed and dragging him outside of the room by his collar. Harry wriggles desperately, trying to escape the old woman's tight grip. Imelda doesn't let go. Dizzy and shaky from her alcohol intake, she opens the front door and drags the boy outside. She leads him along the front yard and then down the empty road. When they find themselves far enough from the orphanage, she takes her hand off the boy's mouth. "Now, freak, off you go," she mutters. Her voice is hoarse and unclear from intoxication. Harry looks at her in confusion. "Go away. You're not welcome at my orphanage. Shoo, shoo," Imelda screeches, waving her wrinkled hand in front of the toddler's face. "Where am I supposed to go, ma'am?" Harry asks, in the only language he is able to properly express himself, in parcel tongue. The old woman's eyes widen dangerously. "Freak!" she yells in a horrible voice. "Devil spawn!" She takes a wide swing backwards with her empty bottle and violently smashes it on Harry's head. The little boy cries out in pain and collapses. The elderly woman, in her drunken frenzy, kneels in front of him and starts repeatedly hitting him with a broken bottle. Harry screams at the top of his lungs. Sharp glass tears his skin tissue apart, leaving deep, jagged wounds. His blood squirts everywhere. The old woman doesn't stop dealing powerful blows to the boy's head, bottom, back, and legs. "Devil spawn! Impure forces, begone, Satan!" the woman mutters to herself, beating Harry's defenseless body up to a bloody mash. The boy is bleeding out. He doesn't even have enough strength to protect his head with his skinny arms anymore. He just lies on the ground, curled up, moaning in pain. Suddenly, old Mrs. Cole gasps and lets go of the broken bottle. She feels a sharp burning pain in her neck and starts suffocating. Harry, with half-open eyes, watches her collapsing and gasping for air. The old woman wriggles on the ground. She desperately struggles to pick herself up, but something seems to be immobilizing her legs. Half-conscious, Harry looks at Mrs. Cole's toes and finally notices a grass snake wrapped around them, tying them together. Adder, meanwhile, hangs down her neck, with his sharp fangs sunken in her carotid artery. Harry watches the light in Mrs. Cole's eyes slowly vanishing. She still wriggles and squirms and struggles, but her moves get more and more slow and sluggish. "Don't let go yet, Adder," Harry hears Grassnake speaking. "She almost killed the young speaker. She must die." As an answer, Adder clenches his jaw even tighter. Old Cole's body falls into death throes. The convulsions jolt through her body violently for a couple of minutes, and suddenly, it all stops. The old woman's muscles relax, her heartbeat stops, and her breath disappears. This very moment, the adrenaline in Harry's veins wear away, and his vision gets dark and blurry. He plunges into unconsciousness. Morphin Gaunt breathes in the sea breeze. So different than the stale air of his cramped cell in Azkaban he has been forced to breathe in for 40 years. The triangular tower of the wizarding prison looks intimidating from down here. The sound of waves, violently crashing against the cliff, intensifies this impression. Starry sky, crescent moon. Morphin is roused from his thoughts by a light blow to his back. First night of freedom gone. Remember, from now on, any funny business, you are immediately coming back here. This time for the rest of your pathetic, stinking life. Local Aurors are going to be in constant vigilance. It's one of the Ministry Department of Law Enforcement's officials, who has released Morphin from his cell and let down here. The Muggle government representatives and police station in Little Hangleton have already been informed about your return. The other ministry official says dryly, both worlds are going to have a close eye on you. Morphin lets out a hoarse laugh. Don't be ridiculous, he hisses, amused. The ministry wizards exchange confused looks. What is he saying? One of them asks. Don't ask me. No idea. The guards claim that throughout all those years, he hasn't uttered a word in English. The other replies, shrugging his shoulders. Does he even understand us then? The first one inquires. Yes, I do, you moron. Morphin hisses, narrowing his eyes. He apparently made himself clear enough, because the first ministry's wizard extends his hand. Okay, Gaunt, come forward. Give me your right hand. Just don't try any tricks. Morphin stretches his right hand out, exposing a tight wristband. The foul thing, painfully attached to his wrist for 40 years, has managed to scald his skin off, exposing vulnerable flesh. One of the wizards pulls his wand out and mutters a spell, causing the wristband to vanish. Morphin feels a sweet relief when his magic fills his body up again. The guarding wristbands, designed to restrict the prisoner's wizarding abilities, are not capable of vanishing one's magic completely. However, they do a good job of preventing the inmates from disapparating. Of course, after 40 years under the Mentor's horrific reign, Morphin's return magic is awfully depleted. There you go, Gaunt. You are now free to go, says the wizard, who has vanished the wristband. Merlin, how filthy is he? The other one notices, frowning his nose. This is how filthy you get after 40 years of not taking showers. I'm still not as filthy as all the mud flowing in your veins. Morphin hisses dangerously. His tone apparently freaks the second ministry's official out. Get out of here quickly, Gaunt. And now, if you don't fancy going back to your cell. He raises his voice. How, you pathetic excuse for a wizard, Morphin hisses. After 40 years of my magic being suppressed, I'm not strong enough to perform a long-distance apparition. See that? The first ministry's wizard says in amusement. He apparently wants us to take him home. The second one bursts into obnoxious laughter. Sorry, Gaunt. It's self-service from now on. His colleague accompanies him in laughter. Morphin turns back to them, disgusted. Damn. There must be a way to get out of this place. He hits upon a bold idea. On a starry, bright night like this one, Morphin might be lucky enough to be able to summon a sea serpent. Those giant creatures inhabit salty waters such as the North Sea and prey on smaller sea animals, usually in the nighttime. Morphin starts hissing rhythmically on a very high frequency. The noises sea serpents make to attract a mate are close to ultrasounds. Fortunately, Morphin is a parcel master. He is able not only to speak, understand, and perform magic in the ancient dialect of the serpent, but also faithfully imitate sounds of every single sort of angry animals to ever exist. He doesn't have to wait long for the effect of his actions. He kneels down on the cliff and looks down at the rough water surface. After a couple seconds, it splits just beneath him, and a massive, dragon-like head appears. Both ministry employees cry out in fear when the sea serpent vigorously shoots up from the sea. An intimidating, majestic creature. Its enormous body is covered in glittering scales. The giant serpent sniffs the air greedily, apparently searching for the female sea snake who has lured it in. Forgive me, but it's only me. I have tricked you. Morphin hisses, trying to sound humble. The giant snake turns his huge bright eyes with vertical pupils towards the man. Speaker. It says simply, flatly, if you agree to carry me across the sea, I shall help you summoning a real female sea serpent. Morphin promises. Without hesitation, the enormous snake lowers its massive body to the level of the cliff, making its back available for Morphin. I shall carry Speaker, it hisses. Morphin, amazed by his own luck, approaches the edge of the cliff and steps on the beast's back, holding tightly its wet, slippery scales. Before the sea serpent sets off, Morphin takes one last look on the two ministry wizards' face. Disbelief and shock can be seen all over them. Morphin lets out a loud cry of joy, before he and the giant sea serpent disappear in darkness. Gaunt Shack. Home. It's already a late morning when Morphin finally reaches the delightfully familiar cottage in Little Hangleton. He sighs, seeing the obviously appalling state the shack is in. Well, nobody has been living here for Salazar knows how long. Front door is so badly damaged by woodworms that Morphin doesn't need to put any effort into breaking it down. Entering the shack, Morphin notices two small objects on the doorstep. He bends down and picks an old rusted nail and a dry, wrinkled snake slough. Morphin smiles to his own memories. The female adder who had been nailed to his door after her death, her mating partner, his precious adder, agreed on this form of letting her stay on her duty post-mortem. Female adder's body nailed to the Gaunt Shack's front door for many years has been serving as a warning sign, repelling uninvited strangers. Morphin steps in. Everything inside of the cottage is covered with a thick layer of dust. It's messy and stuffy. Luckily, Shack hasn't been exposed to humidity, which prevented the wooden framework from rotting and developing fungus. The man smiles, seeing his old mattress and clothes scattered around it. They're probably all damaged by moths and bedbugs at this point. Morphin wonders if any of his old day-wear robes are still intact enough to get change from his nasty prisoner's striped rags. He lifts one of his old robes and his eyes widen. Underneath the piece of clothing on his mattress lay a folded piece of parchment and a short, thick wand. Morphin immediately recognizes Merope's old wand. He unfolds the sheet. A neat penmanship and text written in parcel runes clearly indicate his sister's hand. Dear Morphin, I know how disappointed you are going to be, and my heart breaks to even think about it. Please be understanding. I decided to leave Little Hangleton and move out to London with Tom. Morphin, I know what you're thinking. Both you and Father made yourselves very clear. You both consider me a blood traitor and do not approve of my relationship with Tom. I know it, Morphin, and I'm sorry. Please understand that I won't ever be able to live without Tom. I love this man, and every single moment spent with him is a blessing, a miracle. I want to spend the rest of my life with him, blending into the Muggle society. Therefore, I am not going to be needing my wand anymore. I want you to have it, as I know that your wand has probably been taken from you in Azkaban. I don't know if we'll ever have the chance to see each other again, Morphin. If we won't, thank you for all those times you tried to help me and stand up for me. We may not have been perfect siblings, but you mean a lot to me. You always did. Your sister, Merope Gaunt. Morphin sighs. Poor, poor girl. Fell in love with a muggle. What is more, a muggle of the worst sort. Tom Riddle was a kind of typical rich, posh boy. What's more, a womanizer. With his great looks and his parents' wealth, he has always had a wide choice of eager girls. He could even have a different one for each night if he only wanted. In normal circumstances, he would never have paid attention to a timid, not particularly pretty girl from a poor background like Merope. Morphin's sister, blinded by her insanely strong affection, dosed the muggle with a love potion. She sacrificed all she had, her identity as a witch, her family ties, and even purity of her bloodline, for a one-sided, miserable relationship with a pathetic muggle boy. Morphin wishes that all had never happened. He wishes he could return to the shack and be greeted by his sister, just like in the old times. Merope writes that Morphin means much to her as a brother. Morphin might not have always been treating her like he should have, but he cared deeply about her. Hexing the muggle posh boy's face with a furnuncle spell was his desperate attempt to prevent his sister from making a terrible mistake, an attempt to make her stay with her family. Now, everything what is left to her is her old wand. Morphin wonders what has really happened to his sister and the loathsome muggle boy. He sighs and takes Merope's wand. He starts casting some cleansing spells around. He may not be the kind of person to care deeply about hygiene or cleanliness, but the thick layer of dust inside the house makes it difficult to breathe. Suddenly, he hears a soft pop sound of apparition outside the shack. He lifts his head in vigilance, ready to put up a fight if needed. Morphin! Morphin! Morphin, are you inside? We need your help! Morphin gasps and holds his breath. No, it's impossible. Morphin, please, come outside. The familiar hissing voice makes Morphin's heart melt. He jumps off his seat and opens the front door vigorously. He feels an onrush of wild, boundless joy, seeing who awaits for him at his doorstep. Adder. His familiar from the young years. Adder's yellow eyes, with vertical pupils, are now a little bit milky, and his squiggly scales are less glittery than in the past. But it is still his precious Adder. He came in company of a bright-scaled grass snake. Morphin lets out a hiss of uncontrollable joy, and bends down to pick his old familiar up. But he notices a twinkle of pain and anxiety in Adder's eyes. Morphin, help, please. He's dying. Confused, Morphin takes his eyes off Adder and looks at the grass snake. Only now he notices that the other serpent is wrapped around a tiny human body. Morphin's eyes widen. He jumps forward to the bright-scaled snake and falls on his knees in front of him to take a closer look. Within his tangled mess, Grass Snake is gently holding an unconscious little boy. The kid, barely a toddler, is severely injured. The white nightgown he's wearing is in rags, exposing deep, jagged wounds all over his body. Streaks of his thick raven hair are glued together with clotted blood. Skin on his head must have been sliced apart. In a couple of places, his wounds are contaminated with tiny glass splinters. The boy has apparently lost a ton of blood. He's barely breathing. Sweet Salazar! Morphin hisses in shock and confusion, lifting the injured toddler up. He carries the child into the cottage. Both snakes follow him inside. Morphin lays the boy down on his old messy mattress. While he is looking for a basic medical kit all over the shack, Adder provides him with a comprehensive explanations concerning the boy and the tragic events of the last night. Digging in his father's potion stack, wishing to find some kind of sanitizer, Morphin listens with half an ear to Adder telling the boy's story. The kid has apparently been violently beaten up by an old muggle orphanage supervisor. Suddenly, the man freezes and lifts his head up at the serpent. What did you just say? This boy is a speaker, he hisses in disbelief. Yes, that's why you were the first person I thought of bringing him to when he got injured, Adder explains. Morphin, still stunned, finally finds a germicidal potion, brewed a long time ago by his father, Marvolo. Hoping that it hasn't gone bad yet, the man applies it cautiously to Harry's jagged wounds. Damn glass splinters, he mutters, examining the boy's injuries. I don't want to try vanishing them magically. It's too precise of a job. Might damage his tissue even further. Try the summoning charm, Adder suggests. Morphin frowns unconvinced, but waves his wand upon the boy. Accio glass splinters, he hisses softly. He jumps back and gasps, when over 100 of glass pieces in various shapes and sizes shoots up vigorously from the tiny body. There is way more of them than Morphin could have expected. Some of them unclog wounds that have already been sealed up, causing them to open and bleed again. Morphin waves his wand again, vanishing the splinters mid-air. He looks shocked at the toddler, who is now bleeding from numerous wounds. Scarlet blood flows freely, sinking into Morphin's mattress. Who did this to him again? He whispers. An old muggle woman, supervisor of a muggle orphanage. Adder replies, apparently disgusted with a mere memory of the abusive woman. I'll be glad to pay her a visit tonight. No need. I killed her. Morphin nods at his familiar in acknowledgement. He kneels on his mattress beside the boy and starts sealing up his wounds, one by one, using the simplest Episky spell. He is not a healer, and his medical spell work is not subtle or skillful enough to leave the toddler's skin smooth and scar-free. Nevertheless, the wounds are closing, and the child's tissue in the injured spots regain healthy color. I'm actually surprised that you managed to carry him all the way here. Morphin hisses to Adder, still working on closing the child's wounds. I've tried this for the first time, Adder admits. I guess being your familiar for so many years left me with a tiny bit of magical abilities. Way more than a tiny bit, Morphin states. You performed such a long apparition with the boy and a fellow serpent, all the way from London to Little Hangleton. Your magical abilities are impressive for a familiar. The squiggly snake hesitates for a short while, curling up beside Morphin's mattress. I was actually wondering if you would let me stay here, he hisses apprehensively. If you would accept me back as your familiar and make the old times come back. Morphin turns towards Adder, raising his eyebrows. Are you kidding me, Adder? You have no idea how glad I am seeing you again after all this time. You have no idea how happy you have made me, turning up at my doorstep. He hisses, smiling. I want you to stay here. I want you back as my familiar. Adder's milky eyes brighten. He lifts his flat head and indicates the lying toddler. The boy is a speaker. He must be one of your relatives. He has nowhere to go. I want him to stay here too. Morphin cuts him off mid-sentence with a convinced hiss. Do you know his name? Harry. Just Harry. That's only the first name, Morphin notices. What about his last or middle names? He has been a ward of a muggle orphanage, Ada reminds. He doesn't know anything about his ancestry. He told me he knew nothing but his first name. Harry, Morphin repeats softly, looking at the defenseless raven-haired toddler with jagged, nasty scars all over his tiny body. Harry Marvolo Gaunt, then.